Hey everyone, Happy New Year. My condolences to those affected in the New Orleans terrorist attack. All I'll say to that is this is the problem with having Hamas fans in the streets. Hamas fans in the streets equals terrorist attacks in the streets. It's that simple. Now, with regards to Joe Rogan, I wanted to talk about this because this to me was actually the most interesting like hip hop interview I've seen in a little while. And there's a lot of hip hop things have come out, I would say, in the last couple of days. Not a lot, but again, diss tracks, silly shit. All of them trash and not really worth going into. I like to kind of talk about things that are interesting, and I find that, talking about whack shit is not that interesting. Contrary to popular belief, people know on my channel I go hard on the whack, but the fact of the matter is that much more interesting is talking about interesting things, stuff that illuminates, because trash doesn't illuminate, but dope shit and the analysis of dope shit can teach you about yourself, your community, what you aspire to, your dreams, that kind of thing, your vibe. And so that stuff is just far more satisfying, honestly, to pay attention to. And it seems that Ray has done quite a good interview here with Joe Rogan, um, in the tradition of hip hop dudes giving phenomenal interviews to casuals. With all due respect to Joe Rogan. But look, listen, it's Joe Rogan. So listen, you might as well, if you're going to talk to somebody that's casual, you might as well talk to Joe Rogan, considering his reach. So I think that's a good thing in that regard, I guess. Um, but anyway, I thought this was like a really smart interview, and this is going to be a longer video because there's a lot to touch on here that I thought Ray really like illuminated. And again, I stress this a lot of it, the bots and stuff like that. The truth of the matter is that when you listen to hip hop and also listen to interviews and people talk about hip hop in an intelligent fashion, it really does illuminate things that may not be obvious. But I do think they're fairly obvious if you listen to the music. But again, interviews are good because they can give you context.
Man, they in the shit, but they always was playing music, and a lot of the music was R&B, disco, and then next thing you know, I heard this fucking record, Sugar Hill Gang, and I'm like, the groove was dope. I'm like, holy shit, like.
Remember, I told you. I keep talking about it. Hip hop is about the groove, point blank. That's the basis. That's just the genesis of it all, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, this is why when I stress beats and people didn't get it, now I start to see a couple of reviewers, talk about the beats and stuff. But they got it from me, let's be honest, because they weren't talking about it. You know what I mean? You can't talk about hip hop and not talk about the beat first, frankly, first.
This is what I want to be. You know what I mean? I'm looking at the whole vibe. I'm like, this is who I am right here, But
it's so
it
crazy how it emerged. I mean, it emerged.
Yeah, nobody expected that, bro.
Well, it was a totally new thing.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of resistance. I mean, for people that don't know, those little warning labels on your when you used to have CDs, that all came from Al Gore's wife.
Get the fuck out
of here. Al Gore's wife, Tipper Gore. She was a Democrat. She wanted to censor rap music. Because this was the first time anybody heard like Ice-T, like that 6 in the morning. Everybody's like, what the fuck is this? And that kind of explicit lyrics, they wanted to put a stop to it. And that's why and these dumbasses, they didn't even understand, it sold way more albums.
Yeah.
Because that's what kids are looking for.
Exactly.
Where's the fucking, they don't even swear? Get this shit out of here.
Once they got the label on it, it's like, I want it.
Exactly. Yeah. Once the floodgates got open and kids got turned on to like real hardcore hip hop, you couldn't sell the
regular shit.
The regular shit is like, get out of here with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hip hop, for better or worse, really exposed people to a whole other, well, let's say the more raw side of life. And the truth is that, especially as a kid, like you kids want to learn, right? They don't necessarily want to have things sugar coated to them. When they're toddlers, they can't tell, but like especially certain kinds of kids, when you start getting like 8, 9, 10, 11, like you just want to learn, right? You want to know stuff. You want to know what's really going on. I think there was a stat or something. psychologists can say that kids can tell the difference between a truth and a lie, or they can start to suss out when someone is lying, and even then themselves as kids start to realize, oh, maybe I should lie about this to protect my dad or mom's feelings around the age of 7, which is around the time they can tell sort of right and wrong.
I mean, there's a few guys who got through with regular shit, but it just didn't last.
Nah, it definitely didn't last. But like you said, though, everybody wanted the raw shit. And you got to remember, at that time, it was a tough time, man. Too much shit was going on. I mean, it was to the point where it's like, yo, in our neighborhood, we had like crazy people. Like, if they catch you at night, they'll kill you. Like, they'd be dressed up like a fucking drag or whatever, all this makeup on. And I remember one time going to the incinerator room. My mom's made me go. She made me go to the take out the garbage and shit. I forgot to take it out, and she came home later that day, and I was laying down, and she fucking smacked me in the head with a broom, like, yo, didn't I tell you to take out the fucking garbage? So now I'm going down to the incinerator room, walking. It's on the same floor, and I remember when I cut the corner, I seen a motherfucker sticking his head out, and he had his hair all wild. His shit was like green and red and all this, and he had lipstick on all crazy, and his eyes was all fucking bugged out looking, and he looked at me. And I got the garbage pail with me, and it's like, yo, once I seen him, I just dropped the shit and ran, Mom, Mom. You know what I mean? Back then, you yell your mother name and shit. You think that was something cool back then. She's your hero at that time. Came back, the nigga was gone. But I think if he would have caught me in that incinerator door when it was closed, he was gonna probably try to run in there and probably try to fucking kill me or something.
You know what's so funny about this story, right? So, this was New York, man. Okay, now, of course, I didn't visit New York until 2002. But, again, you have to understand the environment in which rap came up in. You're talking about burning buildings in the Bronx, heroin, like crazy. I mean, there's a lot going on. The music is incredible, of course. There's all this disco. There's all this stuff going on too. Civil rights has just, sort of turned the corner. Blaxploitation films, crazy personalities, projects, educated people who are in those projects, or people who are trying to get the hell out of there, who are smart. There's a lot going on, and that's why that energy of warped and dark and experimental with cleverness and ruggedness, again, that's the Bronx. And the thing with rap is that you can't understand rap, or you can't truly understand rap without understanding the people that created this shit, and the people that created it and then continue to and make it amazing, right? And their surroundings. Like, without understanding that stuff, your concept of rap is going to be so surface level. That's the fact of the matter. I wanted to mention that, I didn't go to New York until early 2000s. And even then, it was still, it was cleaned up by then, really, because the truth of the matter is that the New York that I saw was of course, 2002 was more raw than New York now. But the point is that when you hear stories of how New York was, like, I have family members that moved to New York in the 70s, right? Who were, like, I have cousins and stuff who were born in the United States, right? So, and their parents moved to New York when, you could go to Manhattan and it was like hose, like, it's crazy. Porn flicks and the theaters and the whole thing. Like, it was a different experience back then. Okay, like, now you go to Times Square, it's all, fluffy to a certain extent, and it's much cleaner. And I'm happy for that. I don't think that we need to have all the raw shit walking around in Manhattan, Times Square. But the point is that it was a different New York. A good movie to watch, where I think they showed us in the old New York, was, what's that movie from the 70s? I always be fun finding things up when I'm thinking and talking about this. Famous 70s movies. Is it The French Connection? I think it's The French Connection. Yeah, The French Connection. You gotta watch this movie, man. Then it takes place, I think they were in like New York or something like that, I want to say. Yeah, that's right. It takes place in New York. You want to see old New York? I think they do show like that sort of rugged Times Square and all that anyway. But yeah, this is the environment.
And that shit was going on back then because the drugs was crazy back then. So
Right.
Which is why hip hop, in my opinion, has always had a druggy, spiritual, wild element to it.
That's the big shift is crack.
yeah, crack.
That's also in the 80s.
Yeah, but see, before crack, you had that dope. So motherfuckers is mixing dope and coke together and getting high and shooting it. Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a serious time back then, man. But you know, that's how far to me music went back. You know, listening to Ladies Night. You know what I mean? I had people on my store that had a candy store right on the same floor, but it wasn't a candy store. They had a bunch of penny candy just to make kids feel cool, but really they was selling coke in the back. Coke and dope, though. So, you know, all this was going on in the community, man.
Wow.
It was a serious time. It was scary times back then. Mm-hmm.
But if it's not for those scary times, you don't get the kind of band that Wu-Tang was. Like that has to emerge from an authentic experience.
Absolutely.
It has to.
Absolutely.
And that's part of the appeal of it is that everybody kind of knew that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was part of the appeal. There's never been like a genre of music like that that's so connected to like the grind and poverty and crime and ghettos. Like the whole genre of to be authentic,
Right.
you had to come from that. You
had to
couldn't be
experience
like
that.
some
Right.
rich kid from the suburbs that was talking about some shit you never
Yeah,
actually
we wouldn't have
experienced.
believed you. We wouldn't have
Nobody
believed you.
wants to hear it,
Right.
which is kind of crazy.
Right. That's true.
You see, and I agree mostly. Now, you do have someone like Pharrell, who, from what I understand, was from the suburbs, right? And Pharrell was one of the greatest hip-hop producers ever. And sort of hip-hop minds, I would argue. I mean, again, he did come across at a time when hip-hop was becoming pop, so he injected some slight pop sensibilities, but he was making raw hip-hop, too. It was just clean. It was raw but clean. I mean, Neptunes really had this phenomenal formula that they figured out. But yes, I agree overall that, again, like, that's the environment that hip-hop comes from. It comes from poverty. It comes from struggle. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be stuck in poverty. But the appeal of hip-hop is the fact that human beings struggle. Most people are middle class and below. That's the world. So, of course, something like that is going to appeal to the whole world, right? And a lot of times music tries to, like, kind of forget that. And it's aspirational, so it kind of moves away from that. And it's like it doesn't want to remind people that that's what's going on. But when you have an art form that's so powerful and so cutting edge and it does remind people, people go, oh, shit. And it makes them not feel so bad about being poor. That's the point, right? Then, of course, people are going to gravitate to it.
I mean, you know, back then, you know, hip-hop was really an expression for the ghetto. You know, the way that being that we was living in fucked up situations and nobody had shit, nobody had no fucking jobs like that. It was like, yo, we needed something to keep us cool, keep us in a vibe mode. You know, back then gangs was still relevant. You know, we never looked at ourselves as a gang. We might have looked at ourselves as a tribe. That, yo, when you from a neighborhood and you stick to your neighborhood, you know what I mean? And that's
Tribe Called Quest, right? Again, Tribe Called Quest or Native Tongues, like they're lighter, you know, sort of more positive rap, but they still have that gang shit in there. It's still raw, it's still street. Again, like hip hop, you gotta know hip hop, you gotta love hip hop to actually make great hip hop. Okay, it doesn't mean that you have to talk crime and gangsta and all that stuff. You don't. You really don't. But you have to understand the circumstances that bred and created rap and then try to move it forward. That's all it is, right? I do think that hip-hop in a way has always been about gangs. Whether you talk about the Black Spades with Bambaataa, there's always been a gang element to hip-hop. But I would argue that hip-hop, I think when the gangs that kind of brought and made hip-hop cool, they were making it cool in a sense of like to protect and uplift the community. Okay, it's not like they were there celebrating gang activity. In fact, if anything, those gangs, and if you look in the history of a lot of gangs that were formed in that time period, a lot of them were set up to protect the community from outsiders, racists, cops, that kind of stuff. It's unfortunate a lot of them also fell apart and got co-opted and all that kind of stuff, but that's a whole different conversation. But again, we're talking about gangs that sort of build and uplift and not tear down. Those are two different things. So when someone is like, "Oh, hip hop's always been about gangs, that's why I throw up my rag," that's not really hip hop. That's a gang that's brought in to tear down. It's a completely different thing. Yes, hip hop has always had gangs. Sugar Hill Gang, right? Wu-Tang, right? Like there's always been a gang element, but again, when Wu came together, they came together in the hopes of building. I mean, at least that's what their music was kind of about, all things. You know, my seeds for his seeds, now it's Wu-Tang money all up in the family, right? There's a building. And if you think about it, the world in general, you could argue, is kind of made up of gangs or communities or that kind of thing. But again, some gangs build. Most do not. Most destroy and tear down. Those are the bad gangs. We don't want that shit. And we don't want gangs in general, but we want strong communities, right? And hip hop has always had a community element to it. Again, that's why it's like, you know, the truth is you can't be number one in hip hop without the community as a whole looking at you that way. Hip hop has always had a community thing going on.
That's why even back then it was like a lot of times, you know, you would beef with people that wasn't from your neighborhood just because you wasn't from here. It's like, yo, what the fuck you doing over here? You don't live over here.
And given that environment, this is where, again, I'm not from the United States. I wasn't around. But when I hear this story about how, like, you know, blacks and Puerto Ricans and, you know, and white people, and they were all there creating hip hop, it's so far-fetched to me. Because even now, I've lived in Brooklyn. Even Brooklyn is segregated, in my honest opinion. And I experienced that in the late 2010s. So, and not to imagine what it was like in the 70s. Again, it's not to say that there weren't one white guy here and there or some Puerto Ricans. Of course, like, you know, Puerto Ricans, Jews. I mean, they're there. But again, this idea that it was just this, like, you know, equal melting pot and they all got together, it's a little far-fetched for me to believe. I think what's more accurate and makes far more sense is that the black people in those communities in the Bronx, and you may be Queens, I don't know, but the point is in the Bronx, were actually actively creating this stuff and having fun with it. And then the one sort of Spanish cat or Puerto Rican dude or the one white guy who happened to be around was like, oh, this is kind of cool, right? And like they came through. And again, hip hop, I think the beauty of it is that it is a melting pot music at its core. And it does open itself up because it remixes everything. So of course it's beautiful like that, but I don't really believe this idea that they all equally created. I think that's nonsense, and it's a way of writing black folk out of their own creation, as always, which is racist and fucked up. Anyway, continuing.
You know, then it creates this animosity thing. And I remember for us, you know, being in an area where it was like you go up the block, stayed up the block, down the block, stay down the block. So for me, I was in the middle. So, you know, I lean more towards up the block, you know, but then we would go down the block just to start trouble, and, you know, then they would come up the block and they would start trouble, and next thing you know, before you know it, we all fucking with each other, you know what I mean? So that was our way of getting to know each other, is to test each other's heart, and whatever may happen was happening back then, though. But the music, believe it or not, the music was keeping the peace. Now, you know, the music was keeping the peace because they would do block parties, right? They would do block parties, and you know, everybody knew all these different DJs was coming from different places and gonna play some music and shit.
Yeah. So to my point about Bambaataa, the Black Spades, these guys were getting people together to make music or to put music out, again, to uplift the community and to have to get away from the gang shit. So my point being that the music was there as a means of improvement. So when you have dudes now who are rapping that gang, right, and saying, yo, this is so hip hop, and it's literally there to start gang shit, that's not really hip hop. Or it's taking hip hop and inverting it, unfortunately.
So we knew every time they did that, we knew something was going to happen at the end of the night. It was just mandatory. It was just because people from all over different neighborhoods would come out, and everything would be nice, and next thing you know, you see a motherfucker riding down the street all crazy, trying to hit motherfuckers and swinging the golf club out the window and shit, and somebody mother might have got knocked out. You know what I mean? But the music is still playing. So yeah, that's the type of shit that, to me, that made it fun but made it spooky, but it still was fun because it was
Hip hop. Spooky. Great word. Again, that dark, experimental, spooky shit. It's part of hip hop. This is why, real talk, I always especially even when I was younger, but especially as an adult, as I got more and more into hip hop and just loving it, I got more and more into the spookiness of it, because hip hop has always had that spooky element. The message is a spooky ass beat, right? Like if you listen to them talk about it, Melly Mel and some of the people involved, that beat was spooky as fuck to them, which is why at first they were like, I don't know about this. This is like, is it gonna kill the vibe? But no, in fact, it enhanced the vibe because hip hop is spooky, right? So if you are a pop dude and you're not really into spooky shit, you're probably not really into hip hop overall. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it casually. We welcome all enjoyers of music, but you're not gonna come in and try and dictate what hip hop is. Like, give me a break.
something to remember. It was like,
well, it's fun because you survived.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. The survival, but we were young, so we didn't care about whether we live or died at that time. We didn't give a fuck. It was like, whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen.
That's wild.
But the music is what kept things in order for us, because we always felt like that was a vessel to being calm. When you come from somewhere that's fucked up, Joe, and it's nothing there, you can't get a job because of your community, your zip code don't allow you to be like, yo, he's hired. No, it's too infested over there. So you kind of become relaxed with that mentality of saying, well, fuck it. I'm going to live off the land. I'm going to sell weed. I'm going to do whatever I think that is going to make me survive, So everything was just survival. When music always kept us calm, and you always want to listen to what's next being played. Like I grew up on R&B music, like disco and all that fun shit, roller skating. I knew motherfuckers in the neighborhood that was roller skating. We would get off of Staten Island sometimes and go to these different parks and jams in the city. That was fun too, though. That was fun times for us.
When was it? So was it RZA that tried? Was it initially all 9 guys? Like, how did it get formed?
Well, number one, it was RZA, his cousin Jizza, and his other cousin, Old Dirty Bastard, that they were super close. Now, Old Dirty Bastard and Jizza, they were from Brooklyn. RZA was from Staten Island. We all Brooklyn babies too. Majority of us in the clan, we all resided in Staten Island, but majority of us grew up in Brooklyn. But anyway,
so I actually think it's kind of interesting because this is just New York trivia, but it's not until I lived in Brooklyn, because I remember talking to a girl who was from Staten Island, and that Brooklyn-Staten Island cousin kind of connection is deep. And I always thought that was kind of interesting. But again, also to be fair, what was kind of interesting about Staten Island is that because people didn't know what Staten Island was about, they had the opportunity, Wu-Tang really had this opportunity to craft a sound that was really a mix between the ruggedness of Brooklyn, like super rugged, but also have this like warped, spiritual, dusted Queens vibe, I would say. Right? So they were able to kind of do that too. And I think that's really fascinating, really dope of them.
It was those 3 that were close as shit. So RZA, back then, he had knowledge of self, which was, being involved with the Nation of Islam. And also Jizza and Old Dirty, they were a part of the Nation at that time. So they would go to a lot of rallies. This is a place where everybody go when they build. They talking about mathematics and all of this, but it was Jizza and Old Dirty who instilled the hip hop into RZA.
So you know how you said build. Again, this is where I'm talking about the difference between good gangs and bad gangs. Okay? At the end of the day, in societies, communities survive on builders. Okay? A community worth its salt has to be able to build. This is literally why it's their slang. Like we get together and build, right? A society that doesn't build anything, that destroys, is not a society worth keeping. That's a whole fact. And so the truth of the matter is, and let's keep it super fucking real. If you look at one society versus another society, hint, hint, and one of them has built some shit and the other one hasn't, you have to start asking yourself some really basic questions here, like, why haven't you built shit? Have you had the opportunity to build shit? Right? And not because a lot of people will pretend, the destroyers always pretend, oh, we never had an opportunity. No, no, no. Have you been given the opportunity? And if you haven't used it and you haven't built shit with it, then you're not a society really worth keeping. Something's got to change.
So RZA was a DJ back then, but he knew how to rhyme too. And he knew how to rhyme because of his cousins. So they kind of had this gang called, not a gang, but they had this thing called the All In Together Now crew, which was them three, and they would run around and they would battle, different guys from different cities and move around.
So I'll stop there. I'm going to keep moving towards this interview. Like I said, there's a lot that I want to cover on here. But again, a lot of it was pretty dope. There's some parts of it that were a little kind of slow, whatever. But in general, this was a phenomenal interview. And again, when I talk about gangs, I was really talking, like he said, crews. I mean, hip-hop has always had that element. Crews, gangs, whatever you want to call it. It's people, like-minded people getting together to build. But that's the difference. Getting together to build, not to destroy. Not to be a parasite and profit and just sucks the stuff out of the community. There's a difference. Anyway, so moving on. Let's see what
had they movement going on. So us from the outside looking, it was like, oh shit, yo, we know them. We know they super passionate about, being in the game. And
yeah, he's talking about from the outside, they would watch RZA, ODB, and GZA, who were really passionate about entering the music business and all that kind of stuff before Wu-Tang formed.
Doing whatever they going to do, but we wasn't thinking that far. We just loved the music in general.
Now, I stopped this here because, the love of the music is essential for all this stuff, man. Which is why, I can tell the new generation overall don't love music. I hate to say it. Your average hip-hop head today, so-called quote-unquote hip-hop head, doesn't love the music. And they have actually been programmed to not care about the music at all. They care about narrative and who's co-signing who. That's what they've been told to clear. Who's dating who, right? Which is why they constantly say stupid shit about, oh, yo, you stuck in the past. The first, stuff that's ridiculous. You put on the song and it's like, oh, how old is this? Who cares? Is it dope? You should be talking about whether it's dope or not about how old it is or how new it is. It doesn't really matter. So you have to love the music. This is where greatness comes from. Okay, fast forward here. Doing y'all a favor. Just reacting to me, the core, and there's a lot of jewels here.
His first, big fan. So I kind of seen something in him already. I seen something. I'm like, yo.
He's talking about how Ray says he's basically RZA's first fan, right? Which is how a lot of things go anyways. Usually when you're creating something great, the people closest to you are kind of sometimes your biggest fans, right?
This guy really, him and his cousins, and I'm like, yo, these motherfuckers really got talent. Not only the ability to rhyme, but they was clever. I'm talking about clever rhymes.
Right.
And they was mixing it with the knowledge and, smart rhymes. Not these fucking regular Humpty Dumpty lines. I'm talking about serious rhymes. I'm like, damn, you know what I mean? Yo,
So, yeah, and I agree. I think that, of course, this is why ultimately hip-hop will kind of always default to the serious nature. Of course, comedy is great in hip-hop, but again, you have to be clever and say stuff that really expands people's minds. If you look at any top 5 list of the greatest rappers, these are people with real clever, serious rhymes. You know what I mean? Eric Sermon had an interview, this was a while back, but he was talking about how, Def Squad, he's like, all the guys in Def Squad were college guys, Redman's a college guy. He went to Montclair, right? These are not regular people, right? Like, these are not regular hood rat types. And I say that with all due respect. These are clever people. Again, you have to be clever to get to that level, to even make stuff that's that great. And, you know, to me, hip hop, I remember seeing stuff, especially in the mid to late 2000s. Like, it was starting actually even in the early 2000s, where I just saw people, particularly outside of the rap community, outside of the black community, who were starting to put these like coons and idiots on a pedestal. Like, it was like, oh, like, I want to hear from, you know, random drug dealer number one who never went to high school, never went to college. It's like, why would I listen to this person? Like, I kid you not. Some of these guys were starting, like Gucci. I would see like these, you know, these young white kids who were into Gucci and they were into Jeezy. And I was just like, have these guys even gone to school? What can they tell you about the projects that you've never heard before? They can't. They're just dumb, right? Respectfully, that's their whole thing. It's like, I'm just like every man. I'm the regular Joe drug dealer. I'm sorry, that's just not that interesting to me. So now, again, it's okay if you can put those people out, but be very honest about, look, listen, this is kind of down here. We want to listen to stuff up here, but we can take some stuff down here if it's like kind of fun and like that's it. But again, these publications, some of your Rolling Stones and your Pitchforks started putting guys who were really down here mentally and in terms of their approach to music, and really putting them as like, this is the best shit you're gonna ever hear in your life. Like, you need to listen to them because they represent the community and all this stuff. And it was like wild as fuck. Anybody was around in the 2000s knows exactly what I'm talking about. And this is when rap just really went off the rails, in my opinion. All right. As we proceed,
it's all about you trying to help yourself and get out there. It's like watching Scarface, and the nigga told him, he said, yo, give you $5,000. Better, and if you fuck this up, Chico, Scarface looked at him and said, man, the fuck is you talking about? We built for this shit, man. Yeah. You know, when he lost his man in the mix, but he was able to prove to himself that I could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ray was just really talking about believing yourself as a rapper and all that, and of course quoting Scarface. Look, man, Scarface, again, to me, top 3 film all time, for me personally. I don't know how you can hate Scarface and like raw rap. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, how do you hate Scarface the movie and love Nas, Mobb Deep, Wu-Tang? Like, it's Jay. Like, it's all Scarface shit. And it's not because it's necessarily about drug dealing. I mean, that's a big part of it too. But really, the real essence of what makes Scarface so dope is that he's the ultimate underdog. He starts off as an underdog, as like, yo, I'm coming into this game. I see opportunity, and I want to maximize this shit. Okay? And I got to dodge this, dodge that. And that's rap. I mean, that's such a, you know, making something out of nothing. That's something that, of course, people in the poor, especially immigrant or minority position, can definitely relate to. So again, I never really understood people that hated Scarface. I remember there was a dude, I'm not going to mention his name, white guy, but he was like, oh, Scarface is goofy and all this kind of stuff. He was saying this stuff in the 2000s, but he pretended to be a rap fan. And I've seen him evolve now. He don't even listen to rap anymore. You know, it's like, been around all these clowns, man. These casuals will come in and try to dictate rap, and then they disappear after a while because they don't care. They don't really care. But the damage is done. Anyway. Moving on.
Ever listened to any of the shit where the Brand New Heavies got together with a bunch of rappers?
The Brand New Heavies. I know the name, but
the Brand New Heavies are like a jazz band. They did a collaboration with Gangstar, Cool G Rap, a bunch of guys back there. Some of my favorite shit of all time.
Yeah.
So this is Joe Rogan showing how much of a casual he is. Okay. If the Brand New Heavies are some of his favorites of all time, the Brand New Heavies, I've heard of them. I heard of them back in the 2000s because I was just digging. You know, in fact, I think I heard their name because they had a remix. JD Dilla did a remix of like one of their songs and Tip was on it or whatever. And that's when I even heard the name because I had no idea who the hell the Brand New Heavies even were. But the point is, this is the stuff, and he starts playing, some of this brand new heavy stuff where it's like jazz, and Coogee Rap is rapping on it, and he's like, you can see Joe Rogan like, this is the shit, and Ray's just like, Ray has to be nice, and just listen, but he's not into it, he's not feeling like that. But what I think is so interesting is that this stuff, in my honest opinion, and this is no disrespect to brand new heavies, but again, this is not rap, this is not hip hop, this is acid jazz. Okay, it has hip hop rapping on it, but goes to the whole point that I always make, that hip hop is about the damn beat. It really is. The beat is the central thing, and then the other stuff comes in. So just because you have Gang Starr, main sourcing, and I mean, these are some heavy hitters here. Coogee Rap was on it, and they all rap. They all rap pretty well on this, actually. This is actually, if you want to hear sort of rapping over jazz rap, essentially, really, you should listen to this, because it's not bad. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's not hip hop. It's just, it's like it's like a jazz experiment with hip hop flavor. And that's okay. But again, we have to be very careful and very clear about what we're actually listening to. And the truth that I think is so interesting is that there's always a brand new heavies in every, era. I remember, was it Bad, Not Good? They were a band, they were doing stuff with Ghostface and stuff like that. And I remember, like, they had, I don't know if they did a whole album with Ghostface. You see, look, they've collaborated with Kendrick Lamar, Tyler, the Creator, Daniel Caesar, Mick Jenkins. None of these guys are hip hop. But of course, Ghostface is hip hop. MF Doom is hip hop. But that's how they get credibility by rapping or making music with actual hip hop guys. Doesn't make them hip hop. Okay, this is jazz. This is cool. It's fine. It is what it is. But I don't want to hear a whole album with Ghostface and Bad, Not Good, respectfully, because I know it's not for me. It's made for Joe Rogan. You get what I'm saying? Even this, what's the cat now that we see? That I see Primo putting on a pedestal. Oh, Brandy Watts. You guys might have seen this, Bars and Bass, and and I'm like, who cares about this shit? But it's the same shit. It's a guy, guitar, boom, 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 and some dude rapping. That is not for me. It's not for a hip hop audience. Okay, it's not for people that like the groove of rap and black folk. It's for Joe Rogan, and there's an audience for that, and it's a pretty big audience, actually. And that's fine. But what we're not going to do is pretend that this is some super rap shit. Anyway, let's see what else. Moving on. Oh, I kind of wanted to mention, by the way, last quick, just further on that. But the truth is, again, it's not about the underlying beat. And even if you look at those jazz rap albums and songs, those guys were actually rapping. So you can see how offensive it is to me when you have someone like a Lil Nas X or whoever, who the beat's made by Max Martin, who makes pop music 100%. And then Lil Nas X will come start singing on it, and then they'll call him a rapper. You're like, this isn't even remotely rap. The beat isn't remotely rap. You're not even remotely rapping, yet you're categorized as a hip-hop artist. Again, this is part of the watering down of some great shit. Anyway. So, moving on.
That's what's so crazy. Like 10 years ago, it doesn't exist. Boom. I mean, even rock and roll.
He's talking about, like, now from Joe Rogan's perspective, it makes sense because he started listening to rap, as he claims, in like the late 80s, right? Which would make sense because he's basically saying like 10 years ago, there was no rap. I mean, he wasn't obviously in the streets like that. There was rap before that. But the point is that it's fairly new to people.
Rock and roll, you had the 50s, it starts to emerge, then the 60s really takes off, and it'd been around for a while.
Right,
to have something like hip hop just explode and make a lot of other things look lame.
Yeah, facts. And this is why people were so angry at us. I remember those days in the 90s, bro. Especially like I did do like a year or two school here in Canada in the 90s. I remember being the only black kid, and also being there was one other guy, and there was only the two of us that listened to rap on any level. And we got, rap is crap, and all that hate, because it was like, they knew. A lot of non-black people who weren't up on rap like that, they knew that rap was making their shit look lame, and they were pissed. But again, hip-hop, to me as a kid, once I got to a certain age, I was like 12, 13, it was just like, oh, this rap shit is like the fuck am I listening to the Macarena for? Hey, Macarena, fuck out of here. I'm going to turn on some Mace. I mean, Macarena's 94, so my Mace is like 97. But you get my idea. You get the point. You know, and this is why you look at these reggaeton artists, Afro beats, Amapiano. Who do they all dress like? Rappers. Because rappers had that shit. Rappers made it cool to be ethnic. Let's be real here. Because before, a lot of people were trying to be white. Rappers made it cool to be like, oh, let me actually flex who I am. That's a fact. All right. Moving on.
Why Wu-Tang was so good. The reason why it was so good is because it was real. Like, no one was questioning the authenticity of anybody that was in the Wu-Tang Clan. So it's like that, the message that you guys were putting out, the way you were putting things out, like Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with. Like, that is, that it was like, from you to the world.
Now, this point that Joe Rogan, I was going to say Joe Biden, but Joe Rogan mentions this thing, and I'm like, real in what sense? Because you see, if you watch this interview, you find that Joe Rogan is obsessed with this idea of being Wu-Tang being these gangster killers. Like, oh my God, I was listening to Bob Dylan, and all of a sudden, these random black guys came out of nowhere, and they're talking this hard shit, and ooh, right? It's the NWA thing all over again, right? And I'm sure that's part of the appeal, especially to the casuals and the non-hip hop community. But I would argue that what made Wu-Tang real is because their music was real. It came from a real place. There was a strong artistic hunger. They wanted to be innovative and put on for Staten Island and really make shit that would imprint on hip hop forever, musically. That's what real is about. It's not about your narrative and like whether or not you actually shot someone in the face and you were actually wearing a mask because you had a murder out or whatever and you were trying to duck the feds. Like that stuff's like, I don't really care about that. It's narrative, right? And that narrative, it worked for quite a few people. But for me as a music guy, like it's the music that's real, okay? And I think people have to be very careful about this. Like, I listen to rappers. I listen to this rapper because this rapper is real. Real what? You don't know anything about this guy's life. All that shit could be fabricated. But was the music real? Was the hunger in the music real? That's what you got to listen for. All right, let's see here. Skippity skip. Oh, this is a great part.
They put it together, and next thing you know, that was a hook.
So Ray here is talking about how C.R.E.A.M came together. We'll get to that.
At that time, for me, I was still writing a lot of stories. So I wrote, believe it or not, I wrote 2 verses for C.R.E.A.M. I didn't write. My rhyme never started off as I grew up on the crime side. I was writing about drug dealers in the neighborhood. Like, yo, I know this kid by the name of Gigante, a Teflon Don with a Diamante. The Diamantes back in the days was like the 5 Series Benzes for us back then. And a good friend of mine was like, yo, that rhyme is cool. I think it's alright. I'm like, yo, why you like the rhyme?
Sound like me.
Everybody else like it. He was like, it's cool, I like it. So he made me go back and change it. And when I changed it, I started to think before I wrote it. I'm like, damn.
I'm that friend, Ray, okay? And shout out to all the people who watch. I'm that guy. Yeah, you could go harder. Why not? You need people like this. Where is that guy in this corner? Is that guy still in this corner? Does that guy still like rap? I mean, this is the shit, man. Like, when I see y'all dick riding these whack-ass albums, right? Man's just dropped a booty album. And y'all telling me, it's up there. It's like some of the best stuff you ever recorded. Hip-hop. If you don't like it, give me a fucking break. Y'all niggas dick ride anything. The real hip-hop heads are the ones who are like, nah, that was cool, but I sense you can go harder. And they often do, and that's when the classics got made. The classics that you claim to love. A lot of y'all, if it was up to you, there would be 0 classics, which is exactly why hip-hop is in the state that it's in right now. Because most of y'all are too busy dick riding. You don't really like the classics, because if you really love the classics and you really listen to them, you would understand the difference right away. And you would want someone like Ray to go much harder.
And he said, yo, we need to rhyme about shit that's something that we could relate to, that we're dealing with around what the fuck we wake up to every day. And that's when I grew up on the crime side, you know, the New York Times side.
So he just told you harder.
Yeah, he just told me to think harder.
Harder, yeah.
He said, "Yo, Chef, you could be a little bit more creative."
Well, C.R.E.A.M is crazy because it became viral. That saying dollar bills, y'all, became viral.
Like, but
spread
you know
across.
Where that come from? The dollar bill, y'all. Dollar bill, y'all. Dollar. Tila Rock. That's
actually not from Tila Rock. It's from Jimmy Spicer. But you know, I knew that. This is one of the things. Shout out to John Bronsky, OG. But you know, one of the things that you learn in rap, you start listening to them 80s stuff, especially the early 80s. You got to know your stuff, man. And that's when it started to really click for me a lot of times with rap. So, yeah, that's a Jimmy Spicer thing. But, yeah, man, you just got to think harder. Just be more creative. Creativity, again, is the bedrock. The creativity of the groove, which will influence the creativity of what you're saying, right? You know, the Redman album had trash beats, trash grooves. So, obviously, that's why I'm on some bullshit. Yeah, I'm on some bullshit. That stuff's garbage, right? Jersey. That stuff's garbage. The beats are garbage. So, of course, Redman's not going to say nothing. Anyway, moving on. Let's see here.
like you said, yo, just coming in and you sell your soul and you know, you just stay there. Nah, we can't just stay there.
Is one of the hardest parts getting the right beat?
Oh, the beat is everything, bro.
What have I been saying this whole channel? For 7 years, I've been talking to y'all about beats at least.
Because it seems like all you guys are very prolific. Mm-hmm. Everybody can write. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have a great beat, and how many great beats can you make, right? If you got an album, then another album's coming out next year, like, whoa. You got to have 16, 20 great beats. And then you got to pick from those beats what goes.
Exactly. And this is why I don't like, and I'm always nervous about artists that flood constant releases, because it's like, you're not going to get 16 beats, 16 amazing beats constantly over and over again. You know, like, it's just relax, find the best 16 or whatever, then 2 years later release, you know. That's why it's better to do that. I mean, Lil B shocked me because Lil B would just have constant great beats, but he wasted them all. I mean, that's kind of, it's humor or whatever, I get it. But the point is, again, yes, it's hard to get the right beat. If you listen to rap, LL and all these guys talk about this. You know what I'm saying? I need a beat, right? So without the beat, there's no water.
Goes with what song and try different ways out, and you got to make sure everybody shows up at the studio. How hard was that?
The shit was real, bro. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, number one for us, like, you know, being around so many different lyricists guys, beats are important. You know, I remember one time a fan asked me, he said, yo, what's the most important thing to you, the rhyme or the beat? He fucked me up the whole day with that. I was fucked up. And I answered him. I gave him an answer probably 3 or 4 minutes later, and I was like, you know what? Nobody never asked me that. I said, the beat. I said, you know why the beat? Because the beat makes you think about what you want to say and what you want to get across. I
say this again, man. Listen to the song. Shout out to YOK, Canadian rap classic. YOK, Sunlight, rap. Beats give me vibes. Vibes give me rhymes. One of the great hip-hop quotables. It's obvious. You know, without the right beat, again, if you're not talking production off rip, are you really a hip-hop head? Are you really talking hip-hop?
You know, anybody could make rhymes. I can have you sit with me for fucking a month and you could be an ill fucking rapper. I can tell.
That's a fact. That's a fact. So when y'all are impressed by these guys, I'm like, you're impressed by people who have no vocal talent, who just happen to, they craft some mediocre rhyme, and you're like, oh, that person's dope. No, that's basic. I can write a rap, but the question is, can I flow it properly? Can I flow in a way that will impress and shock you? That takes years of crafting in building your voice and your approach and all that stuff. That takes years. Finding the right beat takes a while. You got to be around people who make it, or if you are going to be making them yourselves, it takes years to become very good at that stuff. Just any Bill Clinton, I've said this, I use this as an example. Bill Clinton can rap. He can probably rap better than half the people who rap now, at least. You know what I'm saying? Probably rap better than Griselda. Give him 2 days, and I'd say, hey, patent your raps like this, and he'll probably figure it out. But can he flow in a way that would actually command your attention, and you'd go, whoa, that's dope? Probably not. It would take him years to do it.
Take you there. But to be able to have that combination factor of making a body of work or that sound that you want, you need to have the right production. So a lot of times Wu-Tang wrote to whatever they felt. It's like how you can listen to Protect Your Neck and you get that energy from us.
Yeah.
I mentioned Protect Your Neck because this girl, Alewa, who I had mentioned in my in a video before. I mean, this girl's freestyling on Protect Your Neck. This came out 9 months ago.
Aimed at your chin for clicks who ain't with this East Coast shit. I reps the bricks, I thought I told ya. Sit at my table, I'm ready, willing and able to exposure. Close out the fake, I need my closure. You ain't know I'm a buffalo soldier. Hold your composure.
That beat's still crazy. Okay? The beat is like 30 plus years old and it's still crazy. It's the right beat, man. It's not here today, gone tomorrow. There are beats that we love from Metro Boomin that you're not listening to right now because they're played out. But Protect Your Neck's not played out. Who's the better producer, RZA or Metro Boomin? Let's be real here, okay? And again, much respect to Metro, but the beat, the reason why people love Wu is the beats. The beats were insane. Of course, they killed it lyrically and all that, and vocally and all that. But this is why you had a Clams. Clams Casino has literally told you on record the 2 people that he listened to the most to craft his sound. That became A$AP Rocky, the bedrock of A$AP sound, was Mobb Deep and Wu-Tang. They had them crazy beats. Very spiritual, bugged out, druggy, right? But still had a groove, of course, that you could get into.
Yes.
You know, you get a certain energy because of that production. Then you get this energy when you get a cream, you get that.
Right.
So for me, I always tell people the beat is everything, you know, and us just sitting down and waiting for RZA to come up with something. Like, one thing about RZA, he was so clever. You know, he had a team of guys that was around him that was assisting him to helping him come with different sounds, and you know, he played with different things. And of course, you know, just having his ear for music and listening to other people's stuff, he was able to isolate himself away from everything and start brainstorming for us. So it's like he was like the Steelers back in the fucking 80s, you know what I mean, when they won 4 Super Bowls in a row. He was like that when Terry Bradshaw and them was playing. Lynn Swann and
he was in the zone.
He was really in his zone. Like,
especially because it became successful.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of motivation behind it, a lot of energy behind it.
Yeah.
I hear what...
Yeah, so, of course, this is what made Supreme Clientele. I've always, you know, again, people are kind of waking up to this now, but to me, Supreme Clientele was my favorite Wu album. I just love the beats on Supreme Clientele. More than a lot of the other beats, really. I mean, again, the other albums are also phenomenal in their own right. But to me, what I love about Supreme Clientele is that it's dusty and bugged out and dark, but it's also a lot of fun. In fact, I would argue maybe even a little bit sunnier than your typical Wu-Tang. Because like, if you listen to a lot of that stuff that came out in 36 Chambers and Cuban Linx, it's very dark. It's fun. It's a ton of fun. But it's like Ray was saying, it really does reflect that neighborhood, that time, that vibe. Dark, moody, beautiful, spiritual, bugged out. And Supreme Clientele was much more, it's that too, but almost sunnier and like kind of more fun. You know, you listen to something like The Grain, you know, Queen of Elizabeth on her leg, you know, like like that. That's just great. It's just fun. It's just a ton of fun. And that's why I really like Supreme Clientele a lot. Anyway.
What you're saying, but without the lyrics, the beat is not the same. It's I see
Here comes the casual.
from your perspective as a lyricist and as an MC that you would think that the beat is more important because it's important to you to get started.
To get started.
But damn, for as a fan, you
The
have
lyrics,
to
you have
have
to-
as a white fan.
those
lyrics.
lyrics.
Yeah,
Too. Just
yeah.
the beats by themselves, that's not enough.
Look.
Now, of course, the beats alone are not enough. Okay, it's a package. I get it. But again, this is who, again, your typical casual doesn't get into the groove of hip hop. They don't even think about it. Okay? They're more focused on what people are saying and the narrative, of like what it's projecting, the style, the image. That's what they're focused on. That's why he cares about brand new. That's why he can listen to that brand new heavy shit. I can't listen to that shit. Not like as like a genuine hip hop experience. If I was sitting with my white friends and getting blunted back in '92, yeah, okay, maybe. And see, he doesn't care about grooveless or weak groove, but I care because I don't want that grooveless or weak groove shit. Right? So again, it's not about the lyrics so much. It's a sandwich, or it's layers. It's like first you talk about the beat, then you talk about the presence of the person, the voice, right? Mostly the voice, right? You talk about the voice of the artist and how that voice fits into the groove of the beat. And then it's like, oh, and then what are they saying? And the mix of all that is what makes it intoxicating.
50 or any of these people that he collaborated with. It's like that's special.
And that's why, like I said, you know what I mean? You can't never front on the maestro, you know what I mean?
Right.
You gotta remember that, DJing started it all. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? The DJ game,
Scratching
that was so
records.
important. Scratching, they created a synergy to the artist to be like, yo, let me try this. Even if you go back to, like I said, look at Quincy Jones, man. Look what the fuck he did, man.
Right.
Look at Frank Sinatra. Like, who the fuck was handling his fucking music, man?
Right.
He was so clever. He needed a vibe, though. He needed something to. Who was that guy?
You ever hear Frank Sinatra when he was young?
Oh, he was
before he was smoking all those cigarettes. It's a super high pitched voice. It's crazy.
It's crazy, right?
It's crazy. You listen to the difference, like wow, it had so much range.
Who was the production though?
I don't know.
Somebody. He never really got famous. I guess.
Well, I think the whole thing back then was Elvis or whoever it was. Whoever was the person that was in front. Mm-hmm. Everybody behind the scenes didn't really get that much respect.
Right.
Hip hop changed this. Okay, again, this is why I get personal in a way when people talk about, oh, rap sucks, rap did this, rap did that. Hip hop changed the music industry for the better in so many ways. There was when I was living in New York, there was a lady. Well, actually, I don't want to go into that, but someone who worked in the music business, okay, in the 80s and 90s, who mixed a lot of hip hop records, and I know her personally. Okay, shout out to her. And she was like, look, listen, at the end of the day, like, first of all, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. People don't get their dues. A lot of women who are involved in rap and all that and in records, and this is very true. That's number one. But number two, she was like, look, you have to understand that prior to hip-hop, like, people didn't really talk about producers. I mean, there was the odd one here and there, but it was all about, like, Joe Rogan was talking about. It was the front artist. It was like Elvis or whatever, and that was that. Right? Now, of course, Quincy Jones and some of these people, started to really put the producer name up front. But the truth of the matter is that, again, hip-hop liberated so much stuff, right? Producers started to get their credit. The maestros, the people behind the scenes started to get their actual credit, right? And a lot of the times when these guys were sampling artists, they were sampling people that were mentioned in the liner notes. That sometimes were just like an off comment where it's like you didn't even really know what they did, and then you went and started digging. You're like, oh my God, I see that this person arranged this and arranged that and arranged this and arranged that, right? And so my point is, it's really only when hip hop came on the scene that people actually started to do splits and really consciously think about who the maestro was behind the records. You got to thank hip hop for that shit. Anyway. What's up, Angie? I'll say Angela.
Imagine when ODB does "Baby I Got Your Money."
Oh my God!
Come on, imagine that, and that becomes this massive hit.
Come on,
massive hit.
He had the most hits out of all of us, right?
He was so fucking talented.
You know what's so interesting? I remember one thing that used to really confuse me back when I was younger was why it felt like so many, and again I say this respectfully, so many white kids were into ODB, and I didn't really get it. Like, because I was a Method Man fanatic. I loved Method Man. I loved Raekwon. Like, those are like the guys I listened to, really. In the 90s, in the mid to late 90s, and then Ghostface later. So like I like ODB, but I wasn't like crazy about him. But they were just crazy about him. Like they followed everything. ODB would say something crazy on MTV, and they're like, ha ha ha, and I was like, I don't get it. And again, I think it's interesting that when people, especially your casual, like they're all like, oh, I love Wu-Tang. I think the truth is a lot of them like ODB, and ODB was kind of cooning to me a little bit. I say that respectfully. He was him. He seemed to be him, and I respect that to a certain extent. But some of it was a little borderline coon shit.
Talented, man, and so real. You remember when he was on MTV and they started talking about like, what are you gonna give? Who are you gonna give your money? He's like, I gave my money to nobody.
He was like, yo.
So. Yeah, and look, of course, another thing too is that sometimes when you have an act that's so serious and, to that point about Wu-Tang being dark and depressing and all that kind of stuff and real and authentic, comedy is a great entry point, right? And that's why it's important to have that in a bit. So I can understand also why people would gravitate to ODB, just in a sort of more innocent way. But at the same time, there was elements of coon in there, I hate to say it, but that's just how I looked at it. All right. This has been such a fascinating interview, honestly. I thought
someone today
touched on so much stuff.
To do what you guys were doing and blow up. And then everybody would want to do it that way. If someone today became like this genius lyricist who was like pointing out things in society and became a huge artist.
But you think that music...
I thought that was Kendrick. Like, Joe, you don't know about Kendrick Lamar, K-Bot, or Doechii, or J. Cole? I thought these were the genius lyricists of today. Why are we waiting for a genius lyricist? You already have one. How many Grammys does he have? He's the greatest rapper ever. I thought this was funny. Anyway, continue.
Music is still. You think the radio will play it?
I don't think the radio means jack shit anymore. I think what means something now is people sharing it. That's what means something.
But how do they get it out there though?
Someone put it on Spotify, put it on SoundCloud, put it on YouTube. Someone sees it, someone hears it, you send it to somebody, they send it to 10 people, and then it goes viral. That's what it's all about now.
I think that's a very romantic way of looking at the internet. And I think this was the whole promise of the internet back, 20 years ago, which is why a lot of us even bought into the idea of setting up YouTube channels and putting up music and things, because it was like, oh yeah, I can just go viral. If it's great, people are just want to find it. Nope. I think we have seen that, listen, YouTube, the sort of the streaming outlets are owned by big companies with massive capital and infrastructure. So ultimately, the internet it's not a free-for-all like what Joe Rogan is thinking. It's really not. Every corner of the internet real estate space is owned by pretty big companies, all things considered. So is your stuff really just going to go viral because it's brilliant? Look, listen, I'll tell you something. So Blood World, right? I'm working on the shit right now. And that shit's going to be brilliant. I put out that first volume. It's coming out later this year. Let's say towards the end of 2025, but maybe sooner. We'll see. I'll tell you, it's the storylines. It's iller than anything you've heard of. Real talk, because I study the ill shit. It'll be up there for sure. Will it go viral? I don't know. I'm not saying my expectations are low, but I'm just being more realistic. I think that there's an audience for real shit. There's an audience for dope stuff, but this idea that like, oh, you just put out something great and people will just no, I don't think it happens. Squid Game season 1, it happens, but Squid Game was already on a major platform, And so when the algorithm started to show, whoa, then, again, someone had already invested money, lots of money into it. Like someone that you don't know about, I don't know. It sounds depressing, but I don't think the real shit is going to go out there like that. But remains to be seen. There is a lot of mediocrity, and the truth of the matter is there's only really every now and then something that's like truly dope. And I have to say, for the stuff that to me has been like truly dope in rap, whether it be Rocky or Playboy, first albums, they did chart, or at least I should say they got buzz. So you never know.
I think it's just be undeniable. Be undeniable. Have some shit where you listen to it and you go, oh.
Agreed. Regardless, it doesn't matter what it does or what it will do and all that kind of stuff. Just be undeniable. Start there. And then what happens.
Be confident, yeah.
And you have your friends like, you got to listen to this, listen to first lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen to that shit.
That's how we always sold it anyway.
Oh my God. Yeah, come out of the gate with a fucking haymaker. Boom.
This is what we do though.
Yeah.
See, damn, you talking like how I feel about my album I'm about to drop.
Ray, is it gonna be trash? With all due respect, homie, is it gonna be trash? Because when you're talking, you're hearing all the stuff. It's about the beat, and all that. Are you curating great beats? Or are you just gonna drop into the fila on us or whatever? Anyway, moving on.
Chains.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So who would have ever thought that I'm calling my album only built for Cuban link niggas? Now everybody and their mother is wearing Cuban link chains today.
He's right. That's that influence. Yeah, man. Now, again, drug dealers and the people who was getting it, they were rocking the Cuban link because the style is cool. Now and Ray was in that environment. He puts it on. It becomes a thing in rap, and it's it's just so ever present. People rocking Cubans. I love Cubans. I like the look of Cubans. We always like the look of Cubans. So, yeah. And then, lastly, I think, and again, this is a great way to end this interview. And frankly, this is why I think this interview coming out of the top of the year is almost like a smaller version of the Cat Williams thing to a certain extent. But you'll see why I mentioned it that way. All right, let's see.
Quarter right now. Yeah, and I never even mentioned the name of the album, but I'll mention it on your show. The name of the album is going to be called The Emperor's New Clothes. You ever heard that Dutch folk tale, The Emperor's New Clothes? You familiar
The
with
Emperor
it, right?
wears no clothes.
So that's going to be the name of it, because I feel like the status quo today, everybody follows bullshit. Nobody wants to be genuine no more. Nobody wants to call out shit that makes sense. It's like, oh, if you believe it, I'm supposed to believe it. I'm supposed to believe nothing that don't feel like what it's supposed to be to me. Goes back to like you said, and I'm listening to everything you're saying about you have to do it from this way. Fuck that. Fuck radio. Whatever is going to stop you from being you. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So this is the same mindset that I'm thinking with my hip hop. My new album that's coming. Like, yo, I'm not going to let you tell me that this is not what people still love. You know what I mean? I don't care. I know what I know from coming up as a kid who loved hip hop and what inspired me. So I'm going to have a ball this year, man. I got a lot of great things that I want to give the world. But, yeah, that's going to be the name of my new album.
People still love it. And I'm telling you, these like young kids that I have at the Comedy Mothership, when I play them 1990s hip-hop, they go, oh!
Yeah,
they just don't know yet.
Yeah. They
just don't know.
And we can't fault them because they wasn't alive probably
also,
at that time.
They got so much shit coming their way.
Exactly.
They're getting inundated by all these new artists.
Yeah.
And all
That's really what it is. They're getting flooded by bullshit. That's really the issue. And, of course, old folk, geriatrics who run these companies a lot of times are flooding them. Here, you like this Barney Rubble, you like this Teletubbies ass rap, right? It's your age, right? Look, dope is dope. That's the truth of the matter. Again, the number one question you should be asking yourself when someone's listening to something: is it dope? It's not what year was it made. Who cares? Is it dope? And then, of course, yes, like we want to hear new great shit. It doesn't have to sound like 1993 for it to be great. It just has to be great on its own merit, okay? And ideally should probably be built on something from that, because that's the whole thing. Like when you look at what made 90s rap great, it built on the greatness of 80s, which 80s built on the greatest of the 70s. It's just how these things go, right? When Rocky came out with Live Love ASAP, it built on the greatness of, Houston sounds, of Memphis stuff, of New York shit, Mobb Deep, Wu-Tang. It built on that. A lot of these new guys, Kendrick Lamar's not building on anything great. He's just making pop music. He's building on Eminem and Nicki Minaj and Lil Wayne. Okay, whatever. But that's not really rap to me.
There's new TikToks.
It's so much shit going on. It's so
much shit going on.
It's so much going on. But, I always say that it's always a lane for people that love music. You know what I mean? I don't care. It's like you could be 50. Today I'm sitting here as a 55-year-old man that still have that kid in him to love what helped me be who I am today. So I'm still at my best when it comes to making music, Like today, the chef.
Anyway, so he talks a little more, but yeah, you just gotta love it, man. And it's about the spirit, and there is that youthful spirit. If you have it, great. Youthful in the sense of wanting to discover and explore, and being free to really say how you feel, right? And making that fun. Not youthful in the sense of like, oh, like the young kids are wearing clothes like this, so I want to be young and immature again, so I'm gonna rock clothes. No, that's not what it is. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Ray's album. I think The Emperor's New Clothes is 100% where we've been, I would argue, for the last like 20 years in the arts space, whether it be film, TV. There's a lot of fake shit. Actually, I wouldn't even say there's a lot. It's actually almost all entirely fake shit. So the real is coming back, man, believe it or not. And it's not just me. There's others, I'm sure, who are in the lab right now who are like, no, enough is enough. So, and by the way, if you see this and you're one of those people, please holler at me, because I want to connect with people who do real things. So my email address, tochiRTA, like the name of my channel, at Gmail. So feel free to email me, tell me what you're up to, whatever. And of course, if we can help each other out, that's great. If not, it's all good. But still, it's nice I want to be inspired, because there is a generation. I think there are people out here who have seen the stuff go down for decades, just whack shit, and they're like, nah, enough is enough. And please don't email me thinking you're one of those people when in fact you haven't done your research and your stuff is trash. And it's just mid, and it's just a copycat of some stuff that I've heard Kanye do or whatever. No, that's not what I mean. I'm talking about like really loving the art form and saying, hey, I've been working at this for quite a while, and I really want to express myself. And then, of course, like, I'll take a listen to or take a view to, and, I wish you all the best, okay? So, as always, thanks for rocking with me. Long video, but I hope it's been useful to you, man. This, to me, was the stuff that I really gravitated to. I don't want to talk about, Young Noble dissing Nas 40 years after the fact. That's what I'm talking about. Like, that's immature. That's stupid. Like, like him talking about Khalees and stuff. Like, that stuff's dumb. And it doesn't lead anywhere. And it doesn't mean anything. And, it's like, I don't want to analyze that shit. I want to talk about people who are building for a future, who are trying to revive the essence and the vitality of an art form. Like, that's what's much more interesting to me. All right? And on that note, I say peace.